right, friends, have you ever said to yourself, I want to start going offshore fishing, and therefore I need some rods and reels, Professor.
Some gear.
You need some gear. But then the question is, what rods, reels, setups do you need, and how much do they cost? Beginner, advanced, what's the difference? Well, here's what's great, Professor. In this video, we're gonna break down all the rods and reels you need if you wanna go offshore fishing. We're gonna talk about what we use. We're gonna talk about how many you need, and we're gonna talk about what they cost, and therefore you're gonna learn even how much we spent on all of our rods and reels. It's gonna be a good time. We're gonna spend a lot of money, so let's find out now about rod, reels, prices, all of it. All right, so Professor, the first rod reel combination that we need to think about if we're going offshore is the
50 class.
50 class, which stands for essentially
50-pound line.
Yeah, 50 pound line. All right, and so what are we gonna catch typically on this? Because this is the most standard type of
It's your most versatile
Yep.
size reel. And this is your everyday bread and butters. Your yellowfin tuna. I mean, this is capable of catching, you know, a 500-pound fish easy, but with the right technique.
Yes.
But every day you can catch 50-pound to 60-pound fish on this without a problem.
yellowfin, mahi,
Wahoos,
wahoo,
yeah.
the
And
whole nine.
Your
Yeah.
white marlin, your blue marlin, all the above.
Yeah, okay. So when we started going offshore, you and I together, at first we had the TLDR, what was it? The
Shimano TLDs.
The Shimano TLDR.
Yeah.
But that wasn't aluminum, that was
Yeah,
a different material.
Yeah, it's made out of plastic, and it's more of an entry-level
Yeah.
rod. And you know, they're great reels. They're great. And
but for every day, probably not ideal.
not ideal. No, they don't hold up to the weather real great. They're fine if you use them, you know, once a week, and you wipe them off and put them away, and they stay out of the sun. But ours are in the sun every day.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So we need a.
So that's one big. We've started upgrading already, and for next season, we're gonna get rid of any of the, let's say, polymer/plastic reels and have all aluminum. So what we're gonna have across the board for our 50s this next season is gonna be what?
A mixture of AVETs, and they'll be the EXW 52 speeds.
All right.
And the International 6s 2 speeds.
Yeah. So in terms of how many you would need, I've got this written down because otherwise we don't want to be thinking on the spot.
Right.
Typically for 50, if you're more of a novice beginner type or weekender, you might run 6 of those. And if you're more advanced, more experienced, you're probably looking at around 9-ish.
Yeah, 9 to 12, really.
Yes, yeah. And in terms of pricing, reel, we're looking at around $600, rod around, and we're talking custom rods here, y'all, because you want to look good, you know what I'm saying?
Everything's got to match.
You got to match, Professor.
That's right.
So we're looking at $300 for that. Let's say another $100 for your line, lure, etc. So you're looking at about $1,000 for a complete setup for each one of your 50s, which means if you get 9 of them, we're at $9,000.
Wow.
That's our first cha-ching, $9,000. So next up, we've got our 70-80 class reel rod setup. Now, why would someone go from a 50 to a 70 or 80? What are we talking about here?
Well, line capacity for one.
Yep.
And we essentially run 80 on this, which is the same size line that we run on the 50, but it has a higher drag capacity and more line capacity.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you could get a fish, you could really put more pressure on a fish and get it to the boat faster.
So if you had to get the fish to the boat faster, let's say hypothetically you got a yellowfin tuna that's chasing you down, which happens about every day, it seems like, at least out of the OBX.
Yeah.
So if you got to get it in faster, well then the 70 or 80 class reel size is going to work a little bit better for you.
Yeah, and what we have learned this season, and we made a video on this, you run this on a bent butt rod, and if the sharks are really bad, you can leave it in the rod holder and crank, and use the boat to get to the fish fast.
Yes.
And have better success keeping your tuna away from the shark.
Yeah, Captain John Bunn taught us that.
Yep.
And the name of his boat is?
Blue Chip.
Blue Chip, which we love, out of Manio, North Carolina, Pirates Cove. So he's a great charter as well. We call that now the Bun Back Down.
Bun Back Down, that's
It's a great little technique that he taught us. You know, we're always learning here. So for the 70-80 class, one thing that is the decider for us is if the sharks are heavy, we're going to be using more 70s, less 50s.
Yeah.
Is likely what we're looking at. In terms of cost and price, Professor, or numbers needed, probably you would need a couple probably if you're a novice, right? Or again, a beginner. And work with us when we use these words. Y'all, you know what I'm saying. Work with us here. And then if you want to just be able to swap them out with your 50s, you're probably looking at another 9 of these.
That's right.
Right. So at that point we're talking, and now the name of the reel that we're going to be using for our 70-80 class reels is what?
Well, this particular 70 is an older model, and it's an International 5 70 VS. But we've got some coming to us that are 80 International 6s.
Yeah.
And they're silver in color. We just like the silver color. It matches.
We just love clean.
We do love clean, and the silver stays nice and bright.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so in terms of price for that, you're probably looking around $950 per reel, and then another $350-ish for a custom rod. And again, you're going to see fluctuations of the market, so please nobody comment and say, we found it for a lot less. I'm sure there's less out there, and I'm sure there's more. Y'all know the deal.
And we have this on a bent butt rod.
Yeah.
You don't have to run it on a bent butt. It can be on a stand-up rod or, a chair rod.
Yeah.
So.
I like my butts bent, though, Professor.
I do, too.
All right, I hear that. I hear that. So all in all, you're looking at about $1,400 per complete setup for your 70 class rod reel. And so if we're getting 9 of those, now for that, we're at $12,600, Professor. So $12,600, give us the noise. Cha-ching, that's right. All right, moving on. All right, Professor, next up. So we've talked about the 50 class, we've talked about the 70 class. So far, we're at 18 rod reel combo. I mean, we're just adding it, right, Professor? Yeah. Now, for the Big Mama Jamas, bluefin time, 130 class. So what are we going to use these big 130s for?
So these are what we use for the giant bluefin tunas, and sometimes it's still not big enough.
That is true.
Right.
That is true. It's amazing. But it's just like a cannon. This thing is so big.
It's heavy. It's bulky. But this is strictly fight out of the rod holder.
Yes.
It's
You ain't gonna put this in the fighting chair.
I mean, you can, but you're gonna get a workout, and it's gonna take about 5 times longer than it will in the rod holder.
It is. It is. And so for the more beginner / weekender, you're probably looking at 4 of these probably?
Yeah, I mean, you could get away with 2, but normally you run 2 short and you run 2 long when you're bluefinning, when you're trolling. So you probably need a minimum of 4.
Okay, so 4. We're going to run 4 at a time, but we want a couple backups.
Yeah.
So we've got a total of 6. And the type of reel that we're using is
an International 130 VIS. And all these reels we're talking about are 2 speeds. They have a low gear and a high gear.
Which is important because why?
Well, when the fish is coming towards the boat, you want to be able to keep up and not let any slack get in the line. So you'll bump it into high speed, and that way you can really gain some line. But if he's getting down and dirty and he's just not moving,
it's just a battle.
You can put it in low gear and you can really gain, on him.
Yeah. All right. So for each one of these Pin 130s, we're looking at $1,350 per reel. The rod, custom rod, because there's a lot more beat to this. And we've got the Winthrop roller guides, which a piece were, I even forget what they were. They were very expensive, each one of those. So it's quite expensive to make these. Call about $800 per custom rod. And of course, we get those from Doug Gray over there at Killer Bee Customs. We love us some Doug. And then another, let's say $200 for your line and whatnot. Could be more than that sometimes.
And Green Top Sporting Goods gave us a pretty good deal on these International 130s. So we want to thank them for that.
Green Top, we appreciate you. And with that being said, we're looking at $2,350 per setup.
Wow.
So if we get 6 of those, Professor, now all of a sudden we're at $14,100. Cha-ching! Ring it up, cameraman. All right, now we've moved through the 50 class, Professor, the 70 class, the 130 class. Now we're going to go down to the 30 class because we want to catch us
Some marlins.
It's marlin time, this was all so new to me this year. First time I ever done any type of bill fishing, marlin fishing, what have you. And of course, the reason why you moved down, although we've talked about this in another video, but just to reiterate, the reason why we moved down is
it's a finesse game with these fish. They just don't come and grab a bait and hook themselves.
You got to massage.
You got to massage the hook in their mouth, pretty much. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it is a finesse game, and is a lot of skill involved. So let's talk about how many of these you would need. Beginner versus that experienced tournament style fisherman, what are we looking at there?
Well, I mean, a minimum of 4, but you would run these in conjunction when you had your spread out with those 4 of these in conjunction with a larger reel, maybe 2 others, like an 80 or something like that. So for your blue marlin bait in your spread, because when you're bill fishing, you know what I mean, you're trying to target all the marlin species to bill fish.
Yep.
So a blue one could come up and grab a bait, and you want to have something ready to feed it to him that's got some shoulders that you can,
Shoulders.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that.
I do too.
Love it when we get them shoulders out there. All right, so the brand itself.
This Shimano Talica 25.
Talica 25 Shimano, and this is like, I mean, she is pristine.
Yeah, it's top of the line in this class. We could have, we really went all out when we bought this model, because we wanted to buy them one time, and this reel right here is top of the line. It's going to last us a long time. We could have got some that would have been about $350.
Yeah.
But these are about $750 a piece.
$750. But are you worth it? Customers out there going tournament fishing with us, you better believe you are. They are worth it, Professor. So with that being said, in terms of total numbers, 4 for the novice and 10 of these for the more experienced. And again, I'm sure some of you watching this, you're like, we fish more than that when we do a bill fish tournament. I'm sure you do. Let's accept it. If you're on Michael Jordan's boat, I hope you do. With that being said, let's say we have 10. So the price for the reel itself, $750. For the custom rod, we're looking at $300. For the line, gear, $100 more. So now we're $1,150 a piece. Times 10, and now, cha-ching, $11,500. $11,500, another cha-ching. All right, Professor, home stretch now. The final type of rod reel setup we need are the spinning rods. Now, why do we need spinning rods?
Well, we use these for 2 different applications. A lot of boats, they call them bailing rods, but they might use a different reel setup.
Okay.
But we're limited with space on here, storage and stuff like that, and we use these for our bailing rods. For one reason is because pretty much everybody is familiar with how to use a spinning rod.
Yep.
Whether they were brought up on a pond, casting for bass, or for trout, whatever. It's all the same principle, just a larger size. And we also use these for our casting rods. So like some fish are busting the water, we can throw a popper on there.
Yep.
And you can cast it to them and retrieve it. So it has dual purpose.
Get 1,000 mahis underneath some floating bucket.
That's right. A piece of float. I love a piece of float.
Yeah, we do. It's amazing how they'll just gather on a little bucket in the ocean, and suddenly there's a million of them out there. And so the number of spinning rod reels we need on an offshore trip would be what?
Well, for us it would be a minimum of 6, because we want every angler to have one.
Yep.
But it really is depending upon your boat and how many people you're going to have. If you're only taking 4 people on your boat, you don't need but 4 of them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So 6 of those, in the type of reel we use at least
is a Spinfisher 6 6500.
So this is a Penn Spinfisher 6 6500.
Yep. And I think we've got 40-pound braided line on here, which is not always great, but when we're using these reel rod setups, we're never using any mono around them. You know what I mean? So this braid, when it has a lot of tension on it and it hits a piece of mono in the water, it'll cut it just like that.
Yeah.
But with the braid against braid is not too bad.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that's why we just like it, because it's easy to use, and you can cast really far with it, and you can feel a lot through the rod with it.
And so in terms of cost on this, you're looking at $320-ish for the reel, $250 for your custom rod, $50 for the rest of your setup, and so we're looking at $620 per setup, or $3,750 Professor.
Ooh, dollar bills flying.
Dollar bills flying. And so that means, as we come down the home stretch here, Professor, because we hadn't done this until we made this video, okay?
Wow.
That means if you are a novice, you're going to have at least 20 rod reel combinations on your boat.
Yeah.
If you're more experienced, you're probably going to have about 40 on your boat. And in terms of the total number, Professor, I'm not showing it to you. Can you make a guess?
Well, I mean, I just think it's somewhere around 35 or 40 is what we probably have.
The total cost for all of this that we have described to you, because I'm sure you wanted to know, and that was the promise going into the video, is $50,920. And if inflation keeps up, Professor, that's going to be a low number.
Wow.
And that, my friends, and that hopefully gives you a sense of what reels you're going to need, right? What rods you're going to need, how much they're going to cost you. And we always say we want you to go on the journey with us, and that's the journey we've been on.
Yeah.
And we're learning these things, and you're learning with us. And we hope that you enjoy this channel. We hope that you subscribe, that you're part of the community. It's grown, it's taken off, and really, we really hope that they come out fishing with us next year out of the Outer Banks.
I hope so.
It's going to be a good time.
I'm hoping.
Professor here, Captain Ron Edwards himself, he is going to be with you. Y'all going to be having a good time. Me and Vita, the cameraman, might even be with you as well. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Share it with your friends, everyone. And until the next time, stay salty.